The Italian Wine Podcast is introducing a new donation drive this month. It's called Why Am I a Fan? We are encouraging anyone who tunes in on a regular basis to send us your 10-second video on why you are a fan of our podcast network or a specific show. We will then share your thoughts with the world with the goal of garnering support for our donation drive. Italian Wine Podcast is a publicly funded, sponsor-driven enterprise that needs you in order to continue to receive awesome free wine edutainment 7 days a week. We are asking our listeners to donate to the Italian Wine Podcast by clicking either the GoFundMe link or the Patreon link found on ItalianWinePodcast.com. Remember, if you sign up as a monthly donor on our Patreon, we will send you a free IWP t-shirt and a copy of the Wine Democracy book, the newest Mama Jumbo Shrimp publication.
Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as we journey to some of Italy's most beautiful places in the company of those who know them best, the families who grow grapes and make fabulous wines. Through their stories, we will learn not just about their wines, but also about their ways of life, the local and regional foods and specialities that pair naturally with their wines, and the most beautiful places to visit. We have a wonderful journey of discovery ahead of us, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Tuscany, to the heart of the Chianti Classico, to visit an historic and prestigious wine estate, Castello di Fonterutoli, and to meet my guest, Francesco Mazzei, whose family have been here for many, many generations, since 1435, in fact. It's a real pleasure to have you here with me, Francesco. Thanks for being my guest. How are you today, and how is it today in the Chianti wine hills?
Well, first of all, good morning, Mark. I'm doing well, and I'm in Foneterutoli, next to Castellina, with a sunny day. Hot to be end of October, but beautiful.
Wonderful. I'm just imagining the colors of the vines beginning to change now. The harvest is complete, and it's, I guess, for winemakers, this is a moment of satisfaction. I know there's a lot of work going on still, but you know that you have the wine in the cellar.
Yes, this is the time of transition from the vineyard to the cellar, and we had a pretty interesting and challenging harvest this year. It was a bit dry and hot, but finally there's a great quality in the cellar.
Oh, that's good to know. Now, Francesco, I know our listeners will be very interested to learn something about the lengthy history of the Mazzei family at Foneterutoli, a story that extends literally centuries. Can you give us, I know it's a long story, can you give us something of the history of your family in this amazing wine estate?
Sure. Well, first of all, as you said in the introduction, Castello di Fonterutoli belongs to my family, to the Mazzei family, since 1435, and I represent generation number 24. And we have on board the 25th generation with two of my nephews working with us. And simply, we inherited the property in 1435 as one of our ancestor, Madonna Smeralda Mazzei, got married to the landlord of Foneterutoli. And then, as they didn't have children, and he had no relatives, the property went to my family and to the Mazzei family. From that time to us directly, generation by generation.
Okay, and you had an illustrious ancestor, Ser Lapo Mazzei, who played a role in actually defining Chianti as an entity.
Exactly. And he was the grandfather of that lady that married Piero da Fonterutoli. And Ser Lapo was a quite interesting person. And there are a lot of documents about him. He was a notary, and he was very, very expert and enthusiast of wine. And he was also the sort of a consultant of the most important merchant of the period, Francesco Datini. And they invented it seems, they invented the letter of credit. So they were the first to buy goods without paying them straight in other goods or with money, but just with a letter saying we will pay for that this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. And in one of these letters, for the first time, the word Chianti is associated to wine, and this December 16, 1398, and is signed by the notary Lapo Mazzei. So he's considered the father of the appellation because he's the first one that mentioned Chianti as a wine region.
Okay, and that's really interesting. So this was at a time when Tuscany was quite advanced in as far as the merchants developing methods of trade and taking products, textiles, wine, all over Europe. So this was a vital economic period.
Yes, it was. Tuscany was very advanced. Banks were born. I'm not sure if the first bank was born in Tuscany, but certainly one of the first banks was born in Tuscany, and it was a very open and liberal country, trading with all the world, the known world at that time.
Okay, so and Chianti was also the name of the geographical area as well as the wine. We think of it as the wine, but the Chianti was the place.
Yeah, we can try to clarify. There's a little bit of confusion about that. Chianti is definitely a geographic area between south of Florence and north of Siena. So the hills between Florence and Siena, and which is the region where nowadays the Chianti Classico is produced. So it's the original Chianti. Then for some reasons, there was a decision by the government in early 1900s to let people produce a Chianti wine outside of the Chianti as a typology. That's why there's a little bit of confusion. But the Chianti is the original area, and that it's where the Chianti Classico is produced. Nothing to do with the normal Chianti.
Yes, that is important for our listeners to understand because it can be confusing. The 8 subregions and the Chianti quality pyramid. Can we perhaps talk a little bit about that before we move on to your wines, the Chianti Classico, etc.?
Sure. First of all, generally, the Chianti Classico can be recognized by the fact that it carries a black rooster as a symbol of the Chianti Classico. And as I said, it's Chianti Classico is the one that is produced in the original area of the Chianti, which has nothing to do with the normal Chianti, not Classico. There are different rules by law. And by the whole world, the Chianti Classico is recognized to be of a higher level. Talking of the Chianti Classico, we have now 3 tiers. The regular Chianti Classico that can be released a year after the harvest. Then the Riserva that can be released 2.5 years after the harvest. And finally, the latest introduction is the Gran Selezione, which is the top tier, and that can be released later, about 3 years after, and a little less than that, and can be produced only by the people that own the vineyards. So there's no trading of bulk wine or grapes to make the Gran Selezione. This is to guarantee that the whole process is controlled by the same producer.
Okay, that's very important. And I'd like to talk about your Gran Selezione wines. One other question I have, Francesco, is the UGAs, the Unità Geografiche Aggiuntive, this way of defining subregions within the Chianti Classico.
Sure. This is something that is still in its itinerary. It has been approved. It's just we need the final. It's not really an approval. The final determination of it by the Ministry of Agriculture, publishing it in the as a law, because it becomes a rule, the new rule, and the Chianti Classico will be divided in 11 UGA, which is basically sub-regions, that will be marked on the labels only for the Gran Selezione at the beginning. And most of them are municipalities, such as Castellino and Chianti, where we have our headquarters. And some of them are part of municipalities or an aggregation of municipalities.
Okay, so from a consumer's point of view, it's allowing one to taste terroir in a more defined way, noting the difference between a Chianti from Castelnuovo Baradenga, for example, or Castellino and Chianti.
Exactly. It's done to address the consumers to make their choices in terms of, different styles, different soils, different microclimates.
Okay. And the top of the top, we've already mentioned, is the Gran Selezione. And at Castello di Fonterutoli, you actually produce 3 Gran Selezione wines. I guess we're doing the same here then, Francesco. You're really defining the terroir from each of these 3 wines. Can you tell us a little bit about these 3 wines and perhaps how they express themselves, express their terroir?
Sure. Yes, we're lucky because our property sits mostly on the Castellino and Chianti municipality, but also has a feet in the Radda and Chianti municipality, as well as in Castelnuovo Baradenga, with the sub region of Vagliagli. And for that reason, we decided to make a step ahead, and along with the Castello Fonterutoli, which is our main Gran Selezione and comes from the vineyards around the village of Foneterutoli, the hamlet of Foneterutoli, and this is our core wine in terms of Gran Selezione, and it's a synthesis of structure and elegance, given the soil that is very calcareous and stony with alberese stones. So that's the core wine. And aside of it, there's Badiola in the Radda and Chianti municipality, which is a little bit more protected from the warm area that comes from the Elsa River. And it's more internal, if I can say so, higher. We're at 570 meters of altitude, with sandy and Galesso soil. And there we get a wine that is very, very vertical, very elegant, very fresh, very acidic, slimmer, but more vertical in a way. And finally, going south of Foneterutoli, there is Vicoreggio 36, which it's in the Vagliagli UGA, in the municipality of Castelnuovo Baradenga, and that is it was started as a laboratory vineyard where we planted all our Sangioveses, all different biotypes of Sangiovese that were grown in the estate, which is 36 of them, 18 clones and 18 muscle selections. And then we found out that this combination was great. And that's how the Vicoreggio 36 was born.
Italian Wine Podcast. If you think you love wine as much as we do, then give us a like and a follow anywhere you get your pods.
Oh, that's a fascinating story. Oh, just one question. Vertical. What do you mean when you say a wine is very vertical?
I mean, it's very long, persistent, and it's not that fat or
Okay, not expansive in that sense. It's yeah.
powerful. Exactly. Not too much of extract, but a lot of great acidity, freshness, and elegance.
Okay, great. Now that's really interesting to hear about three great Chiantis from Castello di Fonterutoli, but each a different expression. So really, an expression of cru in a way, which we find in other areas. Sangiovese is the great grape of Chianti Classico, obviously, the great grape of Tuscany in its various manifestations. But your family have also cultivated international grape varieties here for some decades. And I'm thinking back to the time of the 70s and 80s when the so-called super Tuscan wines were born. You helped to define what a super Tuscan is. Is that a term, do you think, that's still valid today when Chianti Classico now is a truly great high expression? Do you still use the term super Tuscan, or is that not relevant?
Well, at this stage, Super Tuscan it's part of the history of the Chianti Classico anyway, and there are wines under that term, which is not an official term, and it's not an a real appellation, because normally the Super Tuscan wines are labeled under the IGT as a geographical identity, but it's still, I think, it's still valid, and there are wines that were born in that era, in the 70s and 80s, that still can wear that name, that category, and I think it's still actual. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, you were producers of one of the early Super Tuscans, Concerto. Tell us about this wine.
Well, Concerto was born in 1981 as one of the first 10 Super Tuscan ever born. And it was, at that time, it was the research of something more modern, different. That's why we had planted a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon to blend with the Sangiovese, which is the combination there. It's 80% Sangiovese and 20% Cabernet Sauvignon in the concerto, and it was a fantastic experience to grow different grape varieties at that time, and using increasing the density of planting in the vineyards to have more concentration, using small barrels which were not traditional in our place. So it was a step in the modernity.
So it was a big change when we were recovering from the mezzadria, the landscape's changing, the systems of planting vines are changing, and then, of course, bringing in this new way of making wine. And yet, it's been proven that Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot do very well in the Chianti vineyards.
Absolutely. In certain specific locations, both Cabernet and Merlot do very, very well.
Now, the Borgo of Foneterutoli is actually located on the Via Francigena, the pilgrim's route that led all the way from Canterbury in England, as well as from many other destinations across Northern Europe, to Rome. Your ancestors built a pilgrim's hostel where weary pilgrims could rest, sleep, eat, and drink. So you have a very long tradition of offering hospitality at Foneterutoli, and this tradition continues today. Tell us a little bit about hospitality at Foneterutoli.
Of course, we're not only in the one of the branches of the Via Francigena, but we're also in the Chiantigiana, the 222, which is now there's a highway a bit further west, but that was the connection between the ancient connection between Florence and Siena. And yeah, there's a tradition in a family to host people, and that's why even now we have a sort of chic bed and breakfast with 19 rooms spread into the village. So it's not one building, but it's several different buildings, 2 rooms here, 3 there. It makes a feeling of leaving the the place and the family style. And then we have a restaurant and a bar also.
Okay, and that's the Osteria di Fonterutoli.
Exactly, yes.
Well, I know that at the Osteria, you're very proud to serve the classic foods of the Chianti, of Tuscany. Tell us a little bit about some of the foods that are served and which wines go well with some of these classic dishes that every visitor who passes through should try to sample.
Of course, Osteria is the perfect place to showcase our wines, and for that reason, we do mostly meat, although we have some dishes with fish, but basically all vegetarian dishes. But the focus is on meat, and moreover, it's on game, because we have game, and we have also to protect the vineyards from the wild boars, some deers, and that's why that's our focus. And also the game is more natural, no antibiotics. It's wild, so no antibiotics, no hormones. And we do a lot of dishes with game, but in a modern and contemporary way, so more sophisticated. And we're very happy people love it. And of course, it's a perfect match with or pairing with our red wines such as Castello, Fonterutoli, or Siepi, or Concerto.
Okay, yes, that sounds wonderful. And I'm imagining in this big estate, you have your own orto for growing vegetables. You have people gathering porcini mushrooms at this time of year and really bringing in the foods of the lands directly to the table.
Yeah, we're very lucky because it's not only the place of vineyards and olive trees, but as you said, in the last few weeks, it was incredible the quantity of porcini mushrooms we got. And it's also a rather nice place for truffles. It's not the best place, but there are truffles too. And so the nice thing is to have the opportunity to buy stuff from the territory without going too far and cook our dishes with those goods.
Okay, and I imagine you make your own estate olio extravergine d'oliva.
Yes, we do. We do mainly at Foneterutoli, but also in the other estates. We have a range of olive oils from our 3 estates, but the main one, and in my opinion, even the best one, is the one from Castello di Fonterutoli.
Okay, and one other final wine to discuss is your Vinsanto.
Actually, Vinsanto is something which is still in our projects, but it hasn't been developed at the moment.
Okay, so you'll go back to that tradition.
Yes.
Well, Francesco, it's been a real pleasure learning about your family, its long and illustrious history, and about the traditional yet modern wines you're producing today, especially the Gran Selezione Castello di Fonterutoli, and how they express the various parts of this extensive estate. Thank you so much for being my guest, and I look forward to meeting you soon and to visiting Castello di Fonterutoli again myself. Grazie.
Thank you, Mark. It has been a pleasure, and for everybody, Castello di Fonterutoli is open for a visit all year round.
I'm sure many of our listeners will be trying to find a way to visit you. Thank you once again.
Super. Thank you, and have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe right here or wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.